For those that are listening to the replay on a streaming platform here, this is a live show on Fireside. So we're just going to give it a minute or two for the audience to fill up. And in future, if you want to join in live, join us on Fireside. All right. Can we hear okay? Can you hear me there, Zoe?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Got you clear. Very good. Yes, sir. So we're going to turn on the camera. Whose is that one? That's mine. And I'll do the same for you now. Invite to video mode. And you should be able to accept. There we go. Welcome. So I just want to welcome everyone to the Rocstedi podcast, episode 45 with Zoe Yinks. We've got a bit of a story here today. We're going to be doing a deep dive on Zoe and some of the trauma that she's experienced from a child. Now, I don't really know the depth of this story much, just briefly a little bit, and it's quite sensitive already. So as those that know my podcast, I purposely don't go into situations prior because I like to find out with the real value of that firsthand at the first time. So I'll be asking those questions to Zoe, and we'll all be learning at the same time, so we're not repeating. But first of all, let me just set the premises here for the show. If you want to get involved in leaving any voice messages on the show, if you're listening here live on Fireside, on the fortune cookie, there's a clickable link. It's actually got two links on there. One it's got, you'll see the bit.ly/Rocstedi. That will go to my Instagram. You're able to leave a voice message, a pre-recorded voice message, and I'll be able to play that during the show if you have any questions for Zoe or myself. And the other link is for Zoe's, what she'll be discussing today. There's a book that she's written, so you'll be able to go there and purchase the book as well. So lastly, if we can all try and help each other grow here and share this show around, if you can just hit the share button, share it to other Firesiders, share it to other people that you know, even after the fact too. This just helps get the word out. This is a pretty important story today. And Zoe's coming forward to talk about this, to raise awareness, to help other people. So the least we can do is share. It's an important thing. Zoe, welcome to the show.
Hi.
First time on Fireside, on stage.
Yes.
So welcome. And I thank you for dropping into my shows since I brought it to your attention a little while ago. You've been a super supporter, so I appreciate that, listening to the talks and giving me feedback. It was at the stage where I actually did a show a little while ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, with Jody Plechet. He's someone who was kidnapped and molested as a child. He's 50 now. He was 10 or 11 at the time. And when I was sharing that show out, I shared it to you as I do with other people. It kind of hit home, and I got a reaction from you I didn't expect, and I didn't know that you'd experienced some trauma like this as a kid, right? So that's what brought it to my attention, and we started to not talk about it, but just briefly run over things very lightly. and you had approached me to say that, well, first at the time you said one day if you're going to talk about it, that you'll approach me, and you have in the meantime. So I feel pretty honored that you've chosen me to help you get this story out. I'm going to try and be as sensitive as possible. There will be some probably hard questions that come up, or curious questions that the listeners might want to know. If you need to bow out in any way, tap out, or pass on a question, by all means do that. If it gets a bit much, just take your time. There's no problem at all. Okay.
I appreciate that.
So not a problem at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the reactions off on this show. I don't want someone accidentally, sometimes people hit the wrong button during the show. I see it all the time. They hit a laugh or something when it's not a really laughing moment, but this is not a moment we're going to muck around with that. So I'm going to mute the sound effects here. Okay. So we'll still be able to see your reactions, but we won't be able to hear you until we turn it on at a more appropriate time later. So we have one message straight off the bat here. Let me see. Cam said, yes, Zoe. So Cam, Stu is listening. Thank you for joining. Again, just for the new people that have dropped into the room, is that if you want to leave any voice messages through Instagram, the clickable link is here on Fortune Cookie on Fireside. So feel free to do that. Zoe, let's get into it. You got a bit of time for today?
Yes.
There's no time restraints, is there? Okay. So I guess I'll start to treat this as a normal talk when I speak to someone, getting to know them, although being very aware that the trauma starts quite young for you. So let's start to go into it. And usually one of my first questions are, where were you born, and what was being a child like for you? I'm wondering if you could start there.
I'm so nervous. I was born in the Appalachians, in Southern Virginia. I think for a long time I thought I had a normal childhood because that's all you know. My mother worked as a bartender, but she also worked as an exotic dancer. So a lot of my childhood, I was with her for part of my childhood anyway. I would go where she would go. Some of my earliest memories are drinking Shirley Temples at the bar and convincing strangers to give me quarters so I could play those old computer games that they used to have on the end of bars. My father wasn't always present, and when he was, it wasn't healthy. He was in and out of prison a lot. There's so much of my childhood I don't exactly remember, and that's how the trauma works. You dissociate. So I don't know, how deep you want me to go right now, but
so we'll go as deep as you're comfortable to go, and I'll probably say this, from experience from a couple of other podcasts I've done, is that when we go back and forth with these situations, it starts to elicit some of the old memories as well, right? And if you're comfortable with that, it might seem raw, like opening a wound or a scar at the moment. And I've found that over that coming time after, for the guests that I've spoken to before, it's something that they've remembered and been able to deal with. If you're okay with that, and we're going back and forth, and you want me to push and pull and prod to get those memories out, we can do that. If you want to skip over them because they're too painful, we can do that too. So it's up to you. But of course, trying to discuss this, the more you want to put on the table, the more I think it's, in my opinion, is better at the moment. But that's up to you.
I remember playing dress up a lot as a kid. I don't know what the age group of people that are on here, but if you remember the 90s, in the United States at least, those mall booths with the photos to get your kid portraits taken. And this is stuff that's not even in my book because the concept is that it's like a jar of marbles, and you pull a jar full of a handful out, examine those marbles, but there's more marbles underneath. So as I get stronger and start building up my stamina and getting my memories back, things are kind of unfolding, and I kind of have to take them in stride. So I always remembered playing dress up when I was little, and for 30 years I've had memories of that until recently. You know, you think that trafficking with kids is just this thing that happens overseas. Kids get kidnapped and they get shipped out, and that's the circuit that they run. 7 times out of 10, it's somebody that the kid knows, and it's happening within the family. You know, me playing dress up, I wasn't playing dress up. I was getting churned out by my mother. You know, dropping me off at warehouses and hotels and go for a ride with this man. That is like when you think of when I think of my childhood, I remember playing dress up. I remember the bright lights. I remember the rooms, but I can never remember the act of. My brain always shuts it off when it gets close to that part. But I can remember playing dress up and being under the lights.
Okay, so how old were you roughly at this stage?
4 or 5.
4 or 5. So, and there's some of your most early memories.
Yeah.
Okay. Your mother and father, did they stay together, or obviously you said your dad was in and out of prison a lot? Were they still together, or your dad was just in and out of your life, and your mother and father never really crossed paths much?
I found out after some time understanding the role my father played in my life. It's like there was no one to trust. I'll give you an example, and I'm sorry if this hurts anybody. When my mother tried to catch my father molesting me, she put poison ivy on my genitals. And that's how she caught my dad, because he got the rash on his hands.
Wow. Okay, so I'm just trying to structure this a little bit here. Is that so? You obviously now it's clear that your dad was molesting you, but your mother was trafficking you. So there's
Yeah.
2 different acts going on, basically, from your mother and your father.
Yes.
And what was the purpose in your mum trying to catch your father molesting you? Was it because she still was wanting to somehow catch him out? Because it sounds like, sorry, I'm a little confused. She's pushing you out to be trafficked, but not to your father. That was a different, separate thing. Was she in it with your father together doing this? Were they doing this separately without each other knowing it?
You know, I don't really know.
Sure.
I really don't. I did see my mother. I was estranged from them for a very long time because I got put into the foster care system. I saw my mother 3 months before she died. And now I know what she told me, but I don't know if that's the truth. You know, I can recall that she wouldn't let him sign the birth certificate. There was always discord between them. They were always fighting, but he was never really around. And when he was around, it was just with me. He would take me out for car rides to go see his friends.
So he was also trafficking you as well.
110%.
And so,
yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
I don't know. I don't know what I was going to say.
Okay. Are you able to elaborate on some of the memories that you do have about some of the situations and what your father would put you in, driving you around to see his friends?
Yeah. So you know how you keep your childhood toys after you're an adult? Some people do, like a stuffed animal that was sentimental or something like this. My father always bought me these toys that would fit on your finger. So there's a time that he took me to the beach, and the toy's name was Sharky, and Sharky was trying to bite my legs. And then Daddy got tired, and we pulled over on the highway. And I can remember cars going by. I can remember the breeze. I can remember my father sweating. But I can't get any closer than that. But I recently started remembering, because it feels like it's an imposter, because I can't, it's like disbelief. It's like standing outside of yourself and watching these
Correct.
flashbacks take place. My father had a friend that we would always go and visit, and there were always men over there. And I thought it was normal to have your clothes off dancing. I thought it was normal for naked people to be on the television. I thought it was normal to see penises. I can remember when I was in the second grade, a boy had a hot dog coming out of his mouth and he was just being goofy. And I said, that looks like a penis. And I can still remember the way my teacher looked at me.
Okay, so
But I thought that was normal.
sure, like you're exposed to that, no different. There's nothing to compare it to. That's what you're seeing as a kid. There's no logic able to kick in for anything that you can compare it to in your life as being so young. Now, what you were talking about, like that disassociation, is a coping mechanism for people with where it helps lower the emotion in traumatizing situations. So, in fact, there's different ways that we maneuver through the world where we can we either visual or auditory, kinesthetic, or auditory digital, how we sort of map the world out for our understanding. And one of them with the visual is that when you're actually looking at a situation through your own eyes, the emotion is a lot more high than what it would be if, as you're dissociated, also looking at yourself, looking at that situation. So it's a very common thing for what you just described to be disassociated. So what were things like for you at school? How was your schooling as a young kid, and were teachers or anything able to pick up on anything that was happening to you?
School was my favorite thing because it was in my control. And I've always thought that, no one can take knowledge from you. I excelled. I had an opportunity to skip a grade when I was little. I think that I was overly sexual as a child.
In what
My
way? How do
idea
you
of
mean?
playing was kissing boys or kissing girls or playing house and things like that. And it was always my idea because that's what I had learned.
Is it
But
something
school
that
was
you'd
my
learned,
favorite.
so it was the action compared to the emotion?
Sorry?
Is it something that you'd learned as in like the action that you'd witnessed rather than the emotion? I mean, did you find it fun to want to kiss boys and girls, or was it just like that's how you
That's
were
how
getting
you
played
show that
with
you
as a
like
kid?
somebody. That's how you play.
Right,
That's how I
right,
learned how
right.
to play.
Okay.
I
And
played
so
hop
did the
on
teachers
pop,
pick up on that?
stuff like that.
And did any like authorities or teachers, were they able to pick up on these behaviors as a kid to question it or approach you?
You know, no, the only time was that teacher when I said the remark about the boy eating the hot dog. And all I did was get put in a table by myself. And
Right.
that was it.
So your mother is trafficking you separately to your father. Your father's molesting you. Uh, you've had you have no trust in any adults or alpha male or female in your life at this stage.
Right.
None from anyone. What did you do for security? What did you do for to protect yourself, like a safe haven inside, like emotionally?
I And this happened as I got older, when the psychosis really kicked in, when a few events started triggering some of these flashbacks and different things in my college years. I think that the way that I coped for a long time, I stayed stoned when I was old. When I was young, I just acted like it wasn't happening.
Kids are a lot smarter than we think, right? And obviously the trauma that you're going through as a kid and pretending that it didn't happen. I know if as an adult, if something traumatizing happens to us, we can walk around going about our day, but it's on the forefront of our mind. What's that like for a child? When you want to forget about it, do you really forget about it? Or is it still on the forefront of your mind as you're going about trying to be happy? I know that's difficult as an adult, but I'm curious of what that's like as a kid.
I don't know. The concept of if you see a bear in the woods, your chemicals are going to deploy and either let you know that you're going to fight that bear or you're going to run. And those chemicals will go off. For me, it was like that bear was coming home every night. And so I have always been highly motivated and very driven. And it's called, they call it like trauma motivation, because those chemicals are really, really deploying, and you kind of get like a higher supply of it because it's just, you're used to deploying it for so long. But as a kid, I kept to myself. I didn't have a lot of friends. I really dived into school because it was in my control. I had straight A's till the 5th grade. I had the opportunity to skip a grade. One of my foster families wouldn't allow me to do that. I don't know why, but I made school my everything because no one could take that from me. They couldn't take the knowledge. They couldn't take my ability to learn. It was mine. And that was really important to me as a small person and as an adult.
The
I
sense of
used to pretend
control.
like I was a witch and stuff when I was little, a fairy, that I had all these like imaginative ideas that God had a purpose for me, that it would all make sense later.
Do you have any siblings?
I have a half brother, but we're not connected.
And you don't know if, is that from your mum's side or your dad's side?
My mom.
And you know what life was like for him as well. Was he older or younger than you?
All right, younger. And I want to say I was living with my last foster family, and I tried reconnecting with my mother again. She kind of started a new life with my half brother and his father. So I remember sleeping on the couch and waking up in the morning. It was a Sunday, and she said they were going to church. And the church had paid for their apartment, the car she was driving. They had given her a lot of donations, but they didn't know about me and what she had done and how I was treated. So she looked at me, and I'll never forget. She said, "You're not allowed to go. You would be too hard to explain." I didn't see her again after that until many years later, 3 months before she died. I wanted to look her in the face and tell her that I remembered. I remember the cigarette burns. I remember the iron on my back. I remember.
Can you
It was
talk about
important
some
for
of
me
those
to say that
times?
to her.
Are you able to talk about some of the things that she did to you?
Yeah, I can. And this kind of goes into the book and where my life unfolded after is about 10 months ago. I do live streaming for an app based out of Taiwan, and it was my birthday in February. This was last year, and I rented out a hotel in DC. I was going to do it up. You know, pandemic's going on, so I'm not going out partying. I'm going to put on a show for my audience. I rented a bubble machine. You know, it's just, I hired a DJ. It was just going to be a good time. And I remember being in the, you know, lights in bathrooms are a little different depending on where you're at. And I was looking at myself. I was waiting for the shower to warm up, and I was like popping like a zit on my nose or something, you know, just something basic. And the light just shimmered a little funny on my shoulder. I thought, God, what is that? I'll preface this with my mother had always told me that the burn that I have on my foot, perfect circle, was an accident when she picked me up. And I'll go back to that in a second. But when I leaned into that mirror in that hotel, I found little circles the size of a cigarette. My mother smoked Newports. And my armpits. I found them here, then I found them here. Started panicking, right? What is that? What is this? I have 2 perfect circles on my knees. They're bigger. That's a car cigarette lighter. And I can share that story later if you'd like. The way biology works, and I didn't have this knowledge, I guess. It was like a huge aha moment for me looking at myself in the mirror. When you touch a stove, you pull your hand away. If you're a cigarette smoker and you accidentally bump someone at the bar with your cigarette, you automatically pull back. It's just the reaction that you would have. There's no reason why me as a 33-year-old person should still have scars on my body from an accidental cigarette burn. I have a military-grade psychiatrist. And I called her. I said, I think I know what this is, but I need you to just say it. And she told me that oftentimes abusers will hide burns in the folds of a baby so they can't be seen. So my mother used me as an ashtray. And that's really how the foster family or the foster care system got involved in all of this. There was like this huge fight when I was young between her and her boyfriend, and I tried to get her attention, and she hit me with a cigarette in my face. I still have part of that scar, but I went to school the next day, and a social worker came in and saw me on the playground and talked with me. Remember, she gave me a sucker, and I told her about like my dad being in an orange suit in prison and whatever. But like nothing ever came of it other than I wound up moving in with my aunt, my dad's sister.
Zoe, we have a few messages that have been built up from about 15 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 2 minutes ago. So we've got some people that want to ask some things. We also have some written ones on the screen. I'll read this out first. Okay. So Will has said, very much agree with muting reactions. So that's how old that was. Sorry. Elizabeth, I was sexually trafficked at age 3 to age 4. Elizabeth again, so tragic when lives are torn because of this. It is so unbelievably hard. Keith Burr, wow, I'm at a loss for words here. Such a sickening act on such an innocent child. Doesn't have reason behind it. I beg that you don't lose yourself finding the reason behind those actions. Sometimes it is them, not you. Joey Butts, Rocky, and Zoe, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for your bravery to share this. I know it's tough for most to hear these things as well. I've said it before, but it's strange how the grooming process is always very similar amongst these. Thank you for that message, Joey. We've got a few here. We've got one from Mark Thunder. Here we go. This is an old one. It's nearly 20 minutes old.
Zoe, I am so dead happy. My prayers go with you. Thank you. I'm truly sorry. But I'm so sorry.
His audio wasn't the best, but he caught he was sorry for you and you're in his prayers. Next we've got Natalie.
Hi, Zoe. My name is Natalie. Rock does this really great thing where we can leave messages to his guests. When people bring me stories that are similar or different but traumatic, I always want to take a moment to thank them for their honesty and their trust and for viewing me as a safe space. So I wanted to do that for you. So to thank you on behalf of Fireside for sharing your story and being so honest and true with us. I want to notice that and let you know that I see it. And then, Rock, I want to thank you for giving Zoe the platform to have a voice and to share this with us. Much love to both of you.
Thank you, Natalie, and all credit's going to go to Zoe on this one here. We've got 2 messages from Keith Burr.
Hey, I know that we haven't met or anything, but I just wanted to tell you, like, excuse me, how incredibly brave it is that you're doing what you're doing. Just to be able to talk about this is amazing. I had a very similar situation, and I don't remember anything before I was like 12 years old either, and it's a lot of what you're saying is just wow. Luckily, I had humor, but before that, I had drugs, alcohol. Like you said, I've got periods in my life that I don't remember a period through adulthood. And I remember I used to play a game whenever I was a kid. It's like, how long can I go before I think about it? And sorry, I only have just like a minute on here, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's got a follow-up to that one. Thank you for sharing, Keith. I'll play the next one.
I'll say it one more time. I'm very brave. It's amazing that you're still around. A lot of people aren't that strong, and it's terrible how this goes overlooked in communities, especially small ones, where there's just this diffusion of responsibility. And I think that the only thing that we can do really, like as victims, is to draw people's attention to the uncomfortable fact that, this shit happens. So keep on keeping on. I think you're fantastic, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Keith. We've got one more from Brianna. She said, sending you a big hug. You are loved. Okay, so you're touching the audience here, Zoe. These are tough conversations, of course, that you're doing right now for what you've been through. So let's continue if you're okay with that.
Yes.
So
and thank you to everyone.
To my surprise, you're older when you've realized about these burns and cottoned on. By the way, Keith's message. No, he says apologize for being so long. No. If anyone wants to chime in, feel free to do so. This is what it's about. This is about the interacting with Zoe on this. She's putting herself out there on the platform to get these stories out in the open to help people, right? This is about helping, I'm sure, herself and others too. So sharing this, bringing awareness is such an important thing. I think you're being super brave on this. And thank you to the others that have chimed in to support that. So, my question then was, so you're older when you've realized about all the burns, and that was just another. How old were you exactly? Sorry, when you realized about all these different burns from your mum burning the cigarette on you.
It's my 32nd birthday.
32nd. So now you're older as an adult, with all logic formed in your brain too, right? So as a kid, you don't understand these things, your brain's just not developed enough yet. But now you are as an adult to almost discover something that happened as a child. What was that initial impact like? Discovering that and realizing.
I wanted to rip my skin off. I didn't want to be in my body. I was so angry at my brain. It protected me and failed me at the same time. I had let my father be in my life. I had tried building a relationship with my mother. And I felt so betrayed by myself. Because that's the thing about trauma and abusers like this, is that they're not coming back to clean up. They're not coming back to clean up anything. And in fact, when you go to address them and you go to call them out, they still don't care. It's that divisive. So for me, I wanted to just get rid of my skin. And I developed a skin picking problem out of it. I primarily hide them in my scalp so that people can't see. It's something that I'm working on, and I've been working on. That's why I have this in my hand, so that I don't go self-detrimental on things. But it's so confusing. I have so many videos of myself, like recording. When I lost my job after that, I took to the road. They gave me a mental health leave. I started driving, and all I could do was drive, right? All I could do was drive. I had a little money to burn, but not a lot, and I drove. I drove to Georgia, I drove to California, Texas, Oklahoma, Sierra Nevada, back to Kentucky, down to Tennessee. I was driving everywhere because the car did what I wanted it to do. But in that moment, when I saw the scars and I'm standing in the hotel room looking at myself in the mirror, I don't know if anybody that has had a similar background as me, you don't know who the fuck you're looking at. Excuse my language. You don't know who you were looking at. Like, I did not recognize her. I felt so out of my body. I felt like, who is this person looking at me? And I have all these videos. I was recording myself. I was very kind of manic about it, of just trying to like look at myself and try to remember. Like, why can I remember? Why can I remember everything? So it's very like this out of body, you don't know who you are. And I have a lot of recordings that I hope to include in a film one day, or a documentary or something, to show what it's like that I didn't know who I was. It was like I was being downloaded memories that featured me, that showed me as a kid. They were my family members, but they weren't mine. And that was the disbelief for so long. It took me forever in therapy to work up the courage to actually just admit I don't have bipolar. I'm not schizophrenic. I don't have borderline personality disorder. I have PTSD. I have CPTSD. It's very complex. And I didn't want to admit it. I did not want to admit it. Because I've always prided myself for my brain, my smarts, being able to learn, logically look through things. I've always been able to rationalize stuff and calculate it. My predictive analytics are through the roof. Anybody that's experienced trauma, your predictive analytics are probably through the roof as well. I always prided myself on that. But I didn't have that anymore in that moment when I was looking in the mirror and realizing the logic. I have burns still to this day because it was not an accident. I was an ashtray. And it was a hard pill to swallow, a really hard pill to swallow. And I had a 6-figure job. I was at the top of my league in terms of, I know I'd earned government rep of the year. I used to do software tech sales. I had everything. I bought a new car. All my bills were being paid. I was I was doing this homeless program, feeding people on the streets called Donate a Plate. I was just doing all this stuff. But when I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror anymore, because these memories were so foreign, albeit mine, but foreign. I didn't know who I was, and I gave up on myself. And I turned into this robot that could only drive. And all I did was drive. I drove until the money ran out. When the money ran out, I started selling art and NFTs and different things to try to get the money back up. But it was only to put gas in the car so I could drive. I don't know how to explain that.
How old are you now, Zoe?
33.
So this is just recent. This is the last 12 months. 10 months, in fact, if I think I heard you say. Is that right?
Yeah, February I found out. I got the download of memories of the scars, started piecing more stuff together. And then in December, I published my book. I broke the silence.
Okay.
I had been writing that book for years, but it was really hard because I felt like I was missing part of the puzzle. I surely was.
That's kind of where my questions are going next, just to give us an understanding, is that you were still aware of what happened to you as a child with many of the sex abuse, right? But it was that pinnacle moment at the age of 32 where a whole big flood of memories came to you with other physical abuse from your parents, and particularly your mother. And that's the part that affected you more, or is that the piece of the puzzle that brought a whole bunch of other sexual abuse memories together with that? Or I'm just trying to understand, what was life like in the lead up to that? Because that sounds extremely traumatizing for you at 32, yet there was so many traumatizing events that happened before that. So how did that kick it up a gear a lot more? What gear was it in before that age of 32?
I stayed drunk a lot and I didn't think about it. People don't talk about this, but you can either get shy from sex or you can become like a sex addict. And I got hypersexual. If I could get somebody in my bed and make it happen, I felt like I was in control, and that's how I coped. Truly. Because every time that I chose to do that, it was my choice. It was my choice.
There's a question I have, which I did ask the last man, Jody Plauché, he was molested as a child. And I want to ask this to you, and I think it's curiosity that some of the listeners might have, is that although, children aren't sexually active or anything at that age, right? But they've been forced to be introduced to it at such a young age. I'm wondering, at a young age, does it start to change your sexuality in any way? Does it start to give you a sexual preference to anyone? Does it start to make you feel like you're sexually active? Does it make you feel like you're ashamed, but you still want it at the same time? What are those sort of emotions that you go through as a child after being sexually abused so young?
I'll tell you. I attempted suicide when I was first moved into my aunt's home, when I first left my mother's house after the cigarette burn on my face, and social workers got involved. Having that type of activity always in my presence from my mother, my father, possibly my grandmother as well, I'm still trying to figure out those memories and what has been told me and what I know to be true. I felt like that was what I thought it was to play. I thought that's how you played. My first word was fuzzball per my father. He always talked about his nuts. As an adult, my father would talk to me about his sex life and different things. I thought that was normal. So it made me, as a kid, feel like I didn't have my playtime. That's how I learned how to interact and socialize. That's where I got attention. and I didn't have it anymore. My life felt empty without it. In terms of my preferences, I don't know. I like both. I like everybody. Whatever. If you have a good personality and you're good to me and you're a good person, then I'll find you attractive. But I don't know how much it's weighed into my preferences, but it definitely impacted the way I socialize.
Sure. I think the question comes from curiosity of like, we have buttons or triggers in our body for these sort of things that usually probably come out after puberty, but they've been triggered and activated in a way, in my mind, I guess, when a kid is younger that shouldn't even be exposed to it. So once it is, I'm wondering the train of thought. It doesn't mean I'm thinking you want to go out and like hunt people down at the same time. I'm just wondering that, the abuse as a kid, as wrong and as confused and as illogical it is for you, it's still touching parts of the body that are supposed to be pleasurable parts. So this is why I'm thinking it's triggering parts of your body. Like as you're growing up, there's a lot of confusion going on with that. And I guess you've put it into the part of you didn't know any better. So that's how you played. You didn't know any better. That was a normal thing for you. 2 questions, and we've got a few questions from the listeners as well. One I want to ask is, what was your dad going in and out of prison for?
Writing bad checks and distribution of narcotics.
Nothing with pedophilia or children sexual abuse or anything like that?
No, but he's been accused of it by multiple
never been
women
discovered for
he's
that?
been with.
And what,
He's been accused of
if
it.
you're aware or not, what, sorry, cut out then, say it again.
He's been accused of it, but no charges have ever been pressed.
And you've never tried to press charges yourself?
No, the
against him?
statute of limitations has passed.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. I forget you have that over there. Okay, are you aware of what their life was like as a child, or what your grandparents were like in any way?
Yeah. My mother had a similar lifestyle. I only know about it because one of her sisters reached out after she passed and contacted me and kind of dumped a bunch of the history onto me. It's been a cycle of abuse. And like there's things that that would happen when they were little that I know that my mother carried over into how she cared for me. Everybody knows, if you have met with me in person, I'm very careful about how I eat my food. I look at it very intently and I look at it very closely. That's because I would get starved, and my mother would get starved when she was young. She learned this from somebody. You get starved and then you get fed food that's really hot or food with glass in it. Or other things.
Sorry, food that's really hot or food with glass in it? So it's been purposely fed to cause you harm?
Yes.
Really?
My mother's sister talked about getting shot with a BB gun as a kid. Had to piss in a bucket in a room, wasn't allowed to leave. My grandmother had dropped them off outside the county building and abandoned them. My mother was older. She was the oldest sibling. So she ran away when she was 16 to Florida and got into exotic dancing. So, like, I know that my mother had a horrible experience. Per her sister, the grandfather had molested my mother, had been molesting them. There were multiple kids in that situation. So it has been like a long cycle. It's why I probably won't ever have children. Not that I think that I'm capable of that, but this ends with me. We won't do that anymore.
That's
not in this bloodline.
A brave move to make there. So we've got a stack of messages here. Let's get through some of these here for you. Okay, so I'm going to go to the written ones here first. We've got Elizabeth. I have cigarette scars as well, and it is hard accepting it. So that's from Elizabeth. Keith, the familiar stranger that you look at every day. I hope that you can learn who that person is from the time that was stolen from you. Elizabeth, I completely understand how you feel. Joey, I've read how the scumbags will early on convince children some way, if it's not saying don't tell mum, dad, etc., it's some way that they should feel ashamed. Cam, Zoe is so powerful and honestly one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. She's so strong to go through everything and never let her smile break. I'm proud to know her. So that's from Cam Stew. So thank you, Cam. We have voicemails from Deanna. Here we go.
Zoe, I want to say to you that you are incredibly brave for sharing your story. And I also hope that you realize that your brain absolutely did not fail you, but did what it needed to do to protect you and house you till now. And it would be interesting for you to work through some energy work, some inner child work, even some NLP work, now that you've been through some therapy, to reclaim yourself and to feel at home within yourself. I just want you to know that I see you, I feel you, and that you are truly beautiful. Believe it.
Thank you, Deanna. She does Life After Trauma podcast here on Fireside too, so she may even reach out to you. And I agree with her what she said. So your brain did what it had to do to protect you then, and then as you are now older, looking at that, because you could see those scars your whole life, but you didn't realize until you were 32, because your brain is now ready to open up and to show you ways that you can help deal with that, right? So one of those ways of still dealing with the pain and separation, I heard you say, and you looked into the mirror and you didn't know who she was. You weren't referring to yourself as I didn't know who I was. You were still so separated that you said, I didn't know who she was, until you can connect that later. So it's your brain in steps and levels, just protecting yourself with that. So just be aware your brain has not failed you, just like Deanna said.
Yeah, I actually to counter that, I've done that a lot. I call myself we, because there's my inner child and then there's me. And I spend a lot of time talking to my inner child, letting her know she can trust me again. That I got this. That I won't lead us down a path while it's our choice. And lots of conversations letting my inner child know that even though it was just us here, it wasn't my choice. But it's my choice now, and I don't receive that. And so I call myself we to counteract always saying she. It's a lot of out-of-body stuff.
Yeah, and if I can probably go out on a limb and say that you're now an adult trying to retrain your inner child with the guidance that you never had as a kid before. So like you're relearning these things, like you're being the perfect guidance for yourself now. Like this is what this separation, would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, it's a lot of times it's allowing myself to feel what I feel. It's not passing judgment on myself for feeling what I feel. It's really listening to the times where I get scared or the times that I feel fearful. You know, and anxiety, why it always feels like you're dying is because it deploying onto the same receptors and the same chemicals as when you are going to die or you're in danger. So you have to like rationalize with yourself and remember that like it's your self-talk, and that's really what has helped me a lot in meditation, sitting outside of my thoughts and observing them like they're on a river, and that these are they're there, they exist, I acknowledge them, and I observe them and I let them go down the river. So I try to spend a lot of time thinking about that. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you just want to freak out. I've never hurt anybody. But there have been times when I've made it home.
And you can allow yourself to, right?
What'd you say?
No, if there's times, if there's those times that you can't control it and you freak out, you're allowed to have those moments too, right? So you're allowed to control it sometimes, and sometimes you let go, and then you'll pick that up again later. There's no right or wrong to this, there's a whole process that you're going through. So, well done to you. We have another stack of messages still to go. There's Joey Butts. I think he's got 2 here. I'm not sure. Let me play one and see.
No, remember it was the guy whose dad shot the karate teacher in the head. I always wonder how everybody has these personality or sicknesses or whatever you want to call it, or that should be eliminated from the galaxy. They're unique and that they're different individuals, right? But the symptoms are always just pretty much the same. You can kind of pinpoint it of how that memories. I was like, did he put his feelers out there all the time? Like call up like, hey, how's he doing? Like he said that karate teacher would be like, talk to the mom and the dad. And as long as he got the mom and the dad on the phone and they're not screaming at him, obviously, he knows that the kid's not, saying something. And they have a very unique way of going out there and being like, is he okay? Oh, I love him. I care about him. Like, it's very, very disgusting and deceiving to where it's like that person, if it wasn't sexual, it would be something else to hurt someone.
Yeah, that's right, Joey. I agree with you, man. We have Keith Burr, who's going to duck off for his own show in a minute, but he quickly wants to say that he wants to pass his details to you. He actually is qualified in this area too to speak to you, and it sounds like, and he's a good friend of mine. For the first time, I didn't know he'd been through something like this himself, so I just heard this on this show. So I'll connect you and Keith Burr after the show as well. With his phone number, he said. Oh no, sorry. He said he's got a show in 10 minutes, but he's cancelling it because this is more important. So he's cancelling his show to hang around and listen to this. So he's here to support. That's for sure. Okay, appreciate that, Keith. We've got Joey Butts for another message.
Post Munchausen Center. They want you to be sick all the time so that you can rely on mommy. Oh, mommy will make it better. So I mean, if you put that in their heads early on by making them sick, which is. Dude, why are people so sick? This world is disgusting, dude. How do you stop this shit? You can't. Okay, because somebody that was abused like that moves on, they say, well, they were probably abused themselves. Well, don't they remember how horrible it felt? Like, then get them out of here. Let's find unique ways of them trying to get away from, let's say, let's see if George, the disgusting scum human being, can, manipulate his way out of stealing a banana from a silverback gorilla. And the gorilla just hates him already because they make him mad. And he rips his fucking arms off and they wake up back together.
Yeah, I think it runs a lot deeper than just remembering it was traumatizing for someone as well, because there's a lot of habitual things and unconscious psychology that goes on, that people form some fucked up habits, man. And I'm not one to talk because I haven't been through that, but just speaking with people in these scenarios, Zoe, yourself said it's why you probably won't have kids. Not that you won't love them, not that you're not aware of what's happened, but there's something inside you that you just don't maybe want to come out again until you've dealt with it, right?
And I don't want to put my partner through that either. The doubt that I'll have, the mistrust that I'll have if they have a close relationship. Will I overthink it? Will I see it in the wrong way because of the lens that I have on, my childhood lens? And that's not fair to bring to anybody. And I grew up primarily in foster care. So now I've always thought if I do have children, I'll want to try the foster care system and try to be a positive force in that. But I can't seem to get my life quite where I want it. I'm behind my peers, and I am essentially alone. I don't have a lot of really deep connections. And that's because I don't let anyone get that close. I had, it was like the love of my life in college. When my father came to visit, it was, I hadn't seen him in years. We would talk on the phone, but I hadn't seen him in a long time. And I can remember when I was asleep, he was jerking off in my living room on the air mattress that we got for him. I'm in my bed with my boyfriend. And I can hear these sounds. And then that was one of the first flashbacks, because it took me back, way back when I was small, visiting my father at my father's mother's house, my grandma, and going downstairs and needing a glass of water, but hearing funny sounds in the living room. And I always thought it was an accident, because I made it obvious that I was there. I cleared my throat. Like, he knew I was there. He never looked over, but he had to have known I was there. And he didn't stop. And even at my 12-year-old self that had that happen, up to my 20-something-year-old self in college, when that happened in my living room in my dorm, I knew that back then wasn't an accident. And I Wreck-It Ralphed my life. I'm telling you, I fucking wrecked it. There's people, I don't even know if they're here on this conversation that remember me from college, but I became a horrible person because I didn't want anyone to get close. I didn't want anyone to find out what I knew. I didn't want anyone to know. I'm like the love of my life. I love them. I'm so close to them, and I did things to hurt them so they would never want to be around me. I stole things, and I lied, and I said horrible things to people, and I made sure it hurt, and it was very divisive. But I needed to protect this dirty secret because I wasn't ready to admit it. I wasn't ready to admit it at all. I didn't want to say the words out of my mouth. And so I ruined my life just to protect the silence that had been bestowed upon me, because you feel so much shame. And even when I approached my father, and I remember trying to tell him I remember everything, even though I didn't. All he said was, I want to kill myself. And then later...
That's what he said.
Yeah, he said that. But then later, I would always ask him, over the years, 10 years old, 12 years old, 14, 16, hey, Dad, do you remember that beach trip? Do you remember that beach trip? Yeah, with the pink shirt with the unicorn on it and the jean shorts. Remember the beach trip, Dad? You remember Sharky? That's the toy. Do you remember the beach trip, Dad? He would never remember it. He knew about it. And when I had approached him, when I went back to Appalachia to confront everybody and tell them this is the way it was, and this is my truth, and I don't want it to be my truth, but where were y'all? Where was everybody? Why didn't I matter? When I told him, all he gave me in return, he got my aunt to give it to me, it was those same jean shorts turned into a handbag. Sadistic. Psychological. A mind fuck. But that's all I needed to know, that he knew that I knew. And it was all the truth. For a long time, I just wanted to believe it wasn't real. What?
After letting him know that you knew, how did you feel about that? Did you feel more empowered?
Yeah, I did I went back up to DC and I worked my job and earned Government Rep of the Year, and I was top of my team. I did training for an internship program that we were running for hundreds of people. They used my ideas for training. I just dove into work. That's all I could do. I'd work. I'd get up early. I'd stay late. I was like, give it to me. Give me that project. Give me this project. I'll do it.
Keeping distracted.
Yeah, because I couldn't. Still at that point, I wasn't ready to admit. It wasn't until the hotel when I saw the scars, I was like, you really can't run from this. It's on your body.
I've got a question I want to get to, but before we do, we had one more message played here by Chuck, and then we had, I think, 5 on the screen. So here we go. We've got Chuck.
Zoe, my heart breaks for you. I've got a 6-year-old son, and just to even fathom that somebody would just want to treat somebody like him like that, it hurts so bad just to hear. And I'm so thankful that you are able to have made it through. And there's scars, there's deep scars, physical, emotional, but you're here. And I'm so thankful for that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. I've known Chuck for a long time, and that's the first time I've heard him emotional on a show. So you're really touching some hearts here, Zoe. Appreciate you chiming in, Chuck, man. All right, and we've got 6 on the screen. Here we go. Real skinny. My heart goes out to her. Sad this shit has ever happened. Skinny. Zoe, remember this. You are not your parents. The curse can stop with you. Elizabeth, don't compare. You will catch up. You are amazing and strong, stronger than those people. You are perfect in all things. Keith Burr, the parallels, wow. And Keith Burr again. How come it won't let me? Oh, there we go. Keith Burr, people neglect how powerful of a motivator spite and pain can be. Make sure you're living a better life than they ever ripped from you. And Elizabeth, I'm sorry for everything that you went through. It's a hard journey, but you will get through this. So Zoe, you're starting to get a lot of support from people here, and your story's touching. And one thing we haven't gone into just yet, and I want to go back and ask you, is that obviously there's a point in time as a child that you got taken away to foster care. Can you take me down the whole track of what happened there, when it happened, and what happened at the track of when you were being fostered?
When I got the cigarette burn on my cheek during that fight that my mother had, the social worker came into the school and got involved. Small town, sort of. Someone had let my aunt know, I guess. She always told me, I'm stepping up to take care of you, because she was the oldest in the family. I'm stepping up to take care of you. That was all crack, because it was just for a check. I was treated different than my cousins. When I would be overtly sexual as a child, she would always like, you're flirting with my husband. You're a whore just like your stripper mother. You eat last because you eat too much. I pissed in a bucket in my room. I remember one time I ran my mouth, she washed it out with soap. I still cannot touch that type of soap to this day. Thrown down a flight of stairs. But like these were like physical things, right? So like I knew what was wrong, what was going on, and I had to get out. So how I got into like the true foster care system, when she would leave the house, she wouldn't take me with her. I wasn't allowed to go. She would take the phone receiver, the remote to the TV, and anything to like reach out and communicate with anybody. It wasn't in the house. This one particular day, I don't remember what she was beating me for. I remember getting kicked in my ribs and hearing, like when I go back there, I can hear like her breath getting ragged and knowing that it was going to be over soon. But she was so worked up and so keyed up into beating me that she forgot the phone receiver. Now, I'd heard about a girl at my middle school that had a mom that was mean to her, and she got to go to a new mom. So this is my rationale as like a young person. Okay, if I make this call, I'm 14 years old. If I make this call, then I'll get to go to a new home. And, you know, okay, I can do that. So I looked up the woman's number that was a foster parent, and I went ahead and called her, and I said, "Hey, I don't know you. You don't know me, but I know about you. You're a foster mom. How do I get out of this?" And she said, "I can help." I called a social worker. And how it works is they give you a trash bag, and they tell you to put everything in a trash bag. And you get shipped out. And I thought that I was going to like this new happy home, and it wasn't. I was going to a group home. And really, looking back, based off the foster families that I did become a part of after that group home, I wish I had stayed at the group home. I wish I had only earned my GED. I was so hyper focused on school and learning that like all I wanted to do is get back to a regular high school. So the school nurse who had been privy to some of what had been going on because I had been hurt at school or the marks and different things, and the social worker had been involved coming and doing house visits. I wound up living with her, and that's when I learned silence. Okay. I had known to be quiet about the stuff that was happening with my family, but I really, really, really learned silence during that time. One of my foster brothers molested me from 16 to 18 until I left for college. And I didn't want to say anything because I needed to graduate, because I needed to go to college, because that was my way out. I didn't say anything. And then when I got sick at the end of school, my last year of college, I got raped and my apartment got broken into, and it kind of started flooding all these memories up. I needed school. I needed that to be my getaway. So I didn't tell her. And when I got sick and I eventually told my foster mom, she's trying to come pick me up from the hospital, telling me, I can take care of you. You need to come back home. This is too much for you. I told her, I'm on a hospital phone. I'm in fucking like hospital socks, a hospital gown. I'm sitting there and she doesn't know anything that has happened. And I don't want to say it. But I knew I couldn't have her come and pick me up because I couldn't go back to that. So I told her on the phone. And she said, if it's true, you can't come home. If it's not true, you still can't come home. I was like, what? What do you mean? Why would I make this up? And she said, you can't come home. Click. I never talked to her again.
Is my internet coming through okay? I think it was just getting a little sketchy then, but can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yep. I'm just astounded at how when children tend to be put in these situations as a kid, I'm talking about your young childhood, and then when there's a way out, it just continues to happen in all the so-called safe homes and around you that it's like, you know, the only logic I can put behind it is that poor kids like yourself had never had any guidance or anyone to protect you, and people like vultures in these industries are aware of that and keep preying on the same kids over and over. It's just completely sickening. pretty taken back by that. We have 3 screen messages. I'm going to take them now for a moment. Okay, 4. Okay, so we've got Elizabeth. I'm sorry for everything that you went through. It's a hard journey, but you'll get through this. We got Bree. Love you, Zoe. So proud of you for opening up. You haven't ruined your life. You've learned a lot. Kate, Zoe, how do you talk to family members about warning signs or encouraging children to speak out so that they feel comfortable? That's a good one. We'll get back to that in just a second. And Elizabeth says, I have the same reaction to soap. I was poisoned by it. I'm sorry. So Elizabeth had the same experience. But what Kate said is, again, Zoe, how do you talk to family members about warning signs or encouraging children to speak out so that they feel comfortable? What's your take on that, Zoe?
I think it's important to pay attention to the way children play with each other. If they want to go play doctor, they want to go play nurse, or be alone with another child. Not to say that they can't do that, but I think there should just be something, you should just be paying attention to that. Things that I've told people, I haven't really talked about this a lot, right? And these are like people close to me. All of my stuffed animals had a hole in the back of them. And I worked through therapy to understand that a lot of times an adult will use the stuffed animal in between the hand and the child as a guise to get the child acclimated to that behavior. And then eventually you don't need the stuffed animal anymore. But all of my animals have a hole in the back of it, in the head part. I used to think for years that the tag fell off. I found the tag on the bottom of the animal. That's how unaware I was of that. And, just the disbelief. If your child is bedwetting at a late age, I wet the bed probably until about the 3rd grade. If your child is wants to play in a sexual way, there's no reason why a child should know about those things at their age. If they're learning the proper way, all of that is coached. I learned how to be that way. I learned to give boys in kindergarten boners because that's what I've been doing my whole life. There's some normalcy, you start getting feelings in that way. But really, kids don't have that. They don't really have that. They really don't start getting that and naturally until puberty comes along and their hormones change. And the body hair starts growing and you become more aware. Boys will have wet dreams and girls will sit on their foot and rock. Those are normal things at a later age. But as a toddler should not have those urges. And I did. I had them a lot. The bedwetting thing, though, is really important because that part of your body's been stimulated so much, you tend to not be able to control that function, especially in a sleep state. A lot of times when you are being molested in that way, causing the child to urinate is part of the arousal. So if your kid's wetting the bed later than what they should be, I can't say that that's a sure tell sign, but you should start looking around at the people that have exposure to your child. because your child will be coached into not talking. It was my secret with Daddy. It was Mommy's secret. Cops were always the bad guys.
I'm curious, Zoe, when you said before that your mum rubbed poison ivy on you to catch if your dad was molesting you, and that's how she found out. What was her reaction with your father? I mean, she's totally brushed you to the side. Was she angry at your father for doing it? And I mean, she's aware that things have been going on anyway. She's doing it herself. I can't understand the mentality of it. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Like, try and help me understand.
She was angry that he was making money without sharing it with her. Point blank.
Right. Okay. All right, we've got a message from Deanna. It's a written one here. She said, always remember that where you are is just where you are, not who you are. It's a place. So I've got to come forward a little bit. My eyes aren't the best. It's a place and you will continue to move. A main key to healing is forgiveness, true forgiveness. The release of guilt, shame, and blame, anger, bitterness, and resentment. It is huge. It is a huge process. It's not your fault. You didn't deserve any of this. You are loved. That's from Deanna. So thank you, Deanna. All right. So you're 17, 18, getting abused by your stepbrother. What's the process that starts to happen after that? Are you free from 18 onwards? Do things keep happening? What is life like for you after that?
I was assaulted more times than I can count on one hand in college. I think I put out an energy, I guess. I don't know. Stalkers, people breaking into my house. My nipple got bit off, or almost bit off, when a guy tried to take his way with me. I was susceptible to those type of events. It's like I emitted the like, please come and abuse me. But I don't know. I think that this body wasn't mine. Whatever happened to it, happened to it. Let's grab a beer. That's how it would be. If it happened, I didn't tell anybody. I would develop triggers, so like things that would make me super sensitive. It was 2 of the soccer players at my university. I don't watch soccer anymore. I don't watch soccer. I used to love to run. I ran that night that my nipple almost got bit off. So much so that I threw up. I don't run anymore. Because I can't run without remembering that. It just made me really susceptible to being in circumstances where people could take advantage of me. And I know that it was not something that I am responsible for, but I certainly could have put myself in better situations. I was staying really fucked up. I found weed in college. You didn't feel anything when you got high. You didn't feel anything. I studied theater, so there's another escapism that I was a part of. I was always in a show. Why? Because I didn't have to think about me. I got to do character development and be this whole character for 3 months at a time. And I got to be a brand new one and never have to be myself. So I was always in a show. And if I wasn't in a show, I was working on a show, doing lighting, or I was with the dance company. And I tried very hard to keep stuff buried. Stuff that you always feel uncomfortable, but you don't know why. Every time I would talk to my father, I always feel kind of uncomfortable, but not understand why. not until later in college when he revealed himself.
At what point in your life did you start to seek out professional help for everything that you'd been through?
My house got broken into. The gentleman came from money. The prosecutor, the city prosecutor, made a deal on my behalf. I was given $40,000 and told to get some help. I was working.
When was that?
That was in 2012. And I was working for, I've always done disability work, taking care of people like a CNA. And I had a client that I was caring for. We were moving up to up north for an internship, this very large government thing that she was doing on an Air Force base. And I had started Googling psychiatrists. About, I don't remember the timestamp, but when I started telling her like everything that I could remember, I developed a major psychosis and attempted suicide at the Potomac River.
Tell us about that time.
So part of my experience when this was really hard to grasp is that to kind of deal with the reality of how awful things had been, I always told myself that God had a special plan for me and that God was recruiting me to teach, help, expose, and I go through it so that just something more could come of it. So I started looking for signs all the time. And then, of course, I'm living on this Air Force base. So then it starts getting a little twisted, right? I start thinking like government conspiracy. Oh, this is like a government test. And my brain starts getting really active. I wasn't violent, but like I would pick up trash all the time and looking for numbers. And that's because numbers would pull off the page for me. Words would pull off the page for me and rearrange. I could see certain colors do certain things and lights do certain things, and everything was a sign. Everything was a sign that I was some sort of like, I had like this grandiose thinking of like, oh, I'm an angel, and that's why. And God sent me here to go through it, and then when I made it, I was out driving one night. I'm telling you, driving is like my control flex. I followed the GPS, but the GPS was saying stuff that normally a GPS wouldn't say. It's all my mind inventing it. I pulled up beside a baseball field on the Air Force base. And that was a sign because this was a game. And I just didn't have to lose. I just had to win. I had to stay in the game. And this light trail appeared. There's like a walking path beside the baseball field. And I remember seeing like little lights drifting down. And I thought, oh, I should follow those. And I just remember screaming at the side of the river, getting in the river, begging that I don't know how to swim. I don't want to do this. Weird thoughts of like, you need to make it across the river and go to where those flashing lights are. And the lights were doing all sorts of things for me. I know they weren't doing that in reality. But in my elevated state, they were. I remember singing these high-pitched notes and screaming. I had bits of paper with me. I was throwing it in the river. They had just scribbles on it, not even real words or letters. It was just all these symbols. I have notebooks on notebooks that I kept during that time where I thought I was communicating with some higher power that was trying to... I was just so desperate, to believe that it wasn't just this shitty circumstance. I wanted to be how could that be the reality? How can that be? That's where I was, by the river. And something told me, I remember leaning back and I saw a plane. And I followed the plane back towards where the car was, where I had parked it. And there were 2 officers waiting for me. They were walking down the path. And I thought, oh, my government recruitment. They know about me. I set off the alarms. I solved God's puzzle. I am America's first angel. I mean, I was just saying these like ludicrous things to myself. I remember telling them that was when Obama was the president. I was like, oh, I'm going to meet Obama. We're going to have breakfast and talk about the economy. Because I just wanted to imagine that it was for anything but just to hurt.
So this is a form of psychosis. Was there any form of schizophrenic behavior in this too? Or was it a psychosis?
Well, now
Right.
my therapist says that it can mimic itself as schizophrenia, and it can mimic itself as bipolar or borderline personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder. But it's really like these false flags, and it's PTSD is the root of it. And really, truly, until I started treating the trauma, I wasn't able to function proper. I didn't understand what a boundary was. I remember the session where she's like, just say it, just say it, just say it. You have PTSD. You're like this because of trauma. And it was very hard for me to vocalize that. But until I admitted it to myself, I wasn't able to really understand how to like deal with it all. And for years I was misdiagnosed. Oh, she has bipolar, put her on all these meds. Oh, she has schizophrenia, put her on these other meds. I stayed medicated to be palatable for the society.
There was a lead up to this, surely, right? That didn't just happen one day. Did it slowly increase in increments to get to that stage till it was kind of at the point where it was obviously delusional at the time, right? When it's like, I'm wondering what the time process and how quick that built up to that point.
Let's see. I think it was April of that year. Memory is always hard for me, like timeline.
Sure.
I had been assaulted. We went to court, and when semester let up in May, we were let out of school. By June, I was hospitalized. It was very fast. My psychiatrist had told me at the time, and she was trying to negotiate it in the terms that I was going to need to be in a facility, that she had kind of gathered that I'm going to have a lot to say, and when all those things come out, I'm going to have a psychotic break. But by June,
and so what happened with that process?
Sorry?
I said, what happened with that process when you did get admitted? Like, what happened? What was the process from there?
When the cops found me by the river, they handcuffed me and took me into a facility. They put me in an army jacket and gave me water. I poured the water on a bench and sat in it because that's how I communicated with God. And I sang songs because my mind was going very, very rapid cycles. I sang songs. Then they took me out to the police car in the morning because this was kind of middle of the night and the sun was up by this time. I remember going into the car and they took me to a facility and made me take pills. And I took pills and I slept for 3 days. I still don't know what happened in that facility. All I remember is watching from outside of everything, me on a stretcher being rolled out to a permanent facility. So I was at an emergency facility at first. Then I went to a permanent facility that happened to have a Catholic stance. So you can imagine with all my God stuff going on in my mind, that's really, another whirlwind. And I don't remember a lot of the facility. I don't remember a lot of those days because I was a zombie. I was given so much medicine so that I wouldn't feel it all.
How long were you there for?
I think like a month. I had to prove that I was sane. Prove that the medication was working. And it did. It just made you not feel anything. So I always had like this glossed over look on my face. I look back at pictures from that time and I'm just a zombie.
And who's supporting you through this time? Anybody?
At that time, I was still with the person that I was dating during that era. So really, his family, who was in the region, had said that it was okay for me to be with them for the summer before going back to school to finish my senior year. This was right before my senior year. And it was really the first time that I didn't work in a summer. It was the first time I had stopped and just existed, I guess. And they were very kind to me, but I was hostile. I was on these meds that made me not feel. I still didn't want to give up the notion that God had this special plan for me because I still hadn't processed everything about what my family had done to me. So I was bitter. I was bitter and angry. Life was boring in comparison to the chaos that I had been used to. The medicines made it to where you couldn't climax, you couldn't cry, you didn't get sad, you didn't get happy, you didn't feel anything. And I don't really remember much of that summer other than they were really kind to me and didn't ask a lot of me. I didn't have to work. And I went to my psychiatrist appointments. But I remember I had to reset myself. It's like I forgot how to get dressed. I forgot how to brush my teeth. I didn't know how to socialize. I had rules that I wasn't allowed to read the newspaper because I would always come up with these ridiculous ideas from it. So then I went and finished my... Sorry?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying after that, I went back and finished my senior year of college.
My next question was going to be, so at what point did you start to want to deal with the drama head on from what had happened in the past? Obviously, you started going to some therapy then. You'd been through the PTSD and the medication. There's things you were trying to forget over that time, taking drugs and things like that to forget it, numb it. There's that enlightening point that you had when you were 32 when you saw the scarring in the mirror at the hotel. But between that point of getting medicated to the point at that hotel, there's a realization that you're starting to deal with things, maybe not as heavily as that point at 32, but you're starting to deal with things. Where did that come into it?
Maybe I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Okay. So you're at the point where you're starting to get therapy now after this, right?
Yeah.
You've been medicated. Everything's numb. Now, just to jump forward again to what you were saying before, you're in a hotel where you saw scarring at the age of 32, and that seemed to be a profound moment that brought back a whole flood of memories of a jigsaw puzzle that you put together, right? So there's a gap between when you start therapy and to that realization point. In that process, in between that, where did you start to really take on figuring out some of the things that had happened to you until you hit that enlightening part at 32? So it's like you're putting the piece of the puzzle together, but there was that missing part until you were 32. I'm trying to find out the process of piecing that puzzle together from the therapy that you started until the age of 32.
Oh, I had been writing I've always been a writer. So I had been working on my story. The people that knew a little bit about me would always say, you should write a book, you should write a book. I was like, oh, I don't know. But that summer that I got to take that break after the first hospital incident, I tried writing then just to process my feelings, and I couldn't really get it out because so many pieces were missing. When I saw what I saw in February at the hotel, and I had said out loud to another human being, this is what my father did, this is what my mother did, this is my experience, and she validated that for me, I felt stronger. And I like to do a lot of root thinking. So I was like, well, what's the root of it? Why do I feel so much shame? Why do I feel so bad? Why am I holding this secret? This isn't my secret. I knew that I had to get it out. I didn't write that book for anybody but me. I hope that it helps people. I hope that people read it and they feel empowered to write their own expose. And even if you never publish it, even if you never do anything with it, I hope that you write it for yourself. Because for me, it was like extracting it into these perfect sentences in black and white text. It wasn't in my head anymore. I didn't have to hold it. I don't receive that. This isn't mine. This is not mine. Put it on the page. Because I don't want to hold that anymore. It's a very heavy weight. It's a very heavy weight, and it made me sick. It made me sick to be silent. I ruined my life because of it. I hurt people and pushed them away because I couldn't speak it. And I never live with regret. I always go for something because I don't like regret. But I regret not looking my lover in the eye and saying, this is what my dad has done to me, and I don't know how to comprehend it. But our love was so pure and special, and I couldn't say it. So that's what writing was like for me. That's why I wrote. And that was the biggest part of my healing process. Yes, I went to therapy and I had the medications and all the different things, but it wasn't until I started piecing it all together. And I keep a lot of writings, on my computer. I'll just let myself free write. I'll write letters to people that have hurt me or that I just need to say it. You don't have to send that letter. But a lot of what I pulled into the book was me going back from like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and seeing these little things that I wrote, like hinting at it and kind of half acknowledging it, but like not fully acknowledging it. And I think the biggest part is realizing that you do have an inner child that you have to speak to. We all have one. Some are, at rest. But some are a little bit more active and show how scared they are. And mine is active and shows how scared she is. But when I started writing the story, putting it out on paper, and not having remorse. I didn't do these things. They did. And And their power is in our silence. Their power is in the kids that never share the secret because of the grooming that takes place. And I'm not groomed anymore. I'm an adult. When I had decided to separate myself in my 30s from letting any of my previous family reach out to me, that was a big healing thing too, I think. A huge check mark in my life of letting myself know that I deserve more than that. That it's okay to say I don't receive that. I don't want this in my experience. And there doesn't have to be familial guilt. That's not real. It's called boundaries. It's what you want. So at the end of the day, I do believe that we close our eyes and we go to sleep with ourselves. I don't care if you have 2 people in your bed with you, 1 person beside you, your kids in bed with you sleeping, the dog at the end of the bed. When you close your eyes, you're by yourself. So you got to be okay with that. And I worked really hard to start. I wanted to like myself again. I hated myself. I hated myself for my brain, for not remembering, I really just had such a loathing for myself. I still can't really say I love you in the mirror. I've done it a couple times. But I don't know. It was breaking the silence. Whether you publish it and share it with the world, whether you just give it to 5 friends. And what you're doing for me right now, Rock, this is called, it's like you're testifying from me. You're witnessing me share my experience. And what that does for me and my inner child is powerful. Because it's letting my psyche and my conscious know that I am being heard. And that's powerful for someone that had to be very quiet.
And I appreciate you for that so much, coming forward. And there's a lot of support here. I've got people writing and messages coming in, but there's a message from an anonymous person here. They want me to let you know this. I understand both the susceptibility to repeat trauma and the PTSD masquerading as a merit of mental illness. While not experiencing it myself, my sister was molested and raped by a stranger when she was 15. Now, at almost 40 years old, she's lived a lifetime of repeated sexual assaults, cycles of drug addiction, and a stream of diagnoses of bipolar, BPD, schizophrenia, etc. She understands now that PTSD is the root of much of it, but continues to struggle with the fundamental way it's distorted her decision-making process. I love her dearly as her brother, but I struggle with how to be supportive when she's in a down cycle. So I've seen this from outside, how victims of trauma like this carry the scars for a lifetime. You are strong and you are brave, and I believe in you, Zoe. That's from Anonymous at the moment.
Thank you.
We have 3 on the screen too. We've got 4, sorry. Elizabeth, they're all from Elizabeth. So here we go. I have the same reaction to soap. Sorry, that was from before. The next one is, I'm not sure. This was from 40 minutes ago. I'm sorry. So it says, it's hard to, because you don't have the name of what's going on. Peeing in the pants when a child runs or sneezes is not normal either. A lot of times kids will be threatened. Elizabeth, your reaction was totally normal. That was from about 20 minutes ago, and also from a couple of minutes ago, it says, I'm so proud of you for telling your story. So thank you, Elizabeth. A question for you, Zoe. As you're dealing with this and understanding, and you knowing it's not your fault, of course it's not, and you're not silenced about to take the power away from them, give it back to yourself. The effects of the person that you were so deeply in love with before, your partner before. I don't know if you're still with them now, actually. But say you have a partner, you're not having those strong love feelings for them and being in a sexual experience with them. What is that like? And I'm going to give you an example of what happened to me prior, many years ago, before I met my wife. I I was sleeping with a woman, and I knew that she'd been sexually abused when she was young. She told me about the story, but after we'd been sleeping together for a while, and one of these particular times that we were getting into it, I noticed her enjoying it, and then I noticed a shift change on her face, a shift change of almost fear, confusion of pleasure, with like wanting to stop, and then halfway through going no stop, like it came out of nowhere. And I knew with her past the trauma that just came up in an instant, and I stopped because I didn't want to go there. Like I could just witness the whole shift in her. That only happened that one time because we talked about it straight after. She was cool. But what's that like for you? Because the interaction that you have, does it bring back traumatizing memories when you're actually with a lover that you're caring about in those situations? How does that work?
At the time, I was very promiscuous. Like I said, you can either become like afraid of sex or really hypersexualized. And I was on the hypersexualized side. With that particular person, there was never a time that I remembered any of my trauma because I loved them. And we were very communicative and talked through everything. As we were in our early 20s, learning like what our preferences were, what we liked, what we didn't like. You know, that person was my best friend at the time, and we talked through, you know, discovering what you like. And you got to think, at that time, I didn't really know. You know, I didn't really know that that was my experience. I knew I'd always felt weird around my dad, and tough feelings about my mom, but I didn't really know at the time. Once I knew, after what happened with my father in my dorm room and the living room and the JO thing and all that, I didn't want to he never triggered anything, but it made me so promiscuous. It's like I couldn't get enough of it. It's like I had to keep opening my legs, and I had to keep sucking people off because I needed to prove every single time that it was my choice. That it was my choice. I had integrated that into my relationship. I won't get into that, but I had integrated into my relationship, and I was very promiscuous. Because I needed every single chance to prove that it was my choice now. That I did this because I wanted to. And I was giving consent. I haven't had a man ever transgress me in my older days. I don't get triggered like that from people because I'm in power. It is my control. I would do certain things, though, like no sleepovers. I didn't want anyone sleeping over at my house. Sometimes I was funny about kissing. I didn't want to be like too intimate. The first chance that somebody started showing feelings for me, I would ghost them. Because emotional bonding, you share all this deep shit, all this vulnerable stuff. And I used to think for a long time that no one would ever look at me like a woman without those experiences. That they would just see that. That I would get close and tell them like, oh, hey, by the way, my dad did all this shit. Oh, by the way, my mom did all this shit. And then just not see me in the same lens that I wanted to be seen in. So that's part of why I was really quiet too. Or trying not to like emotionally connect with people. It was just so much easier to keep it very physical. And it was like a drug for me. I needed to have these interactions. And I remember the crazy activities that I would do. The wilder, the better. Because it was my choice. My choice. And they glorify it in college. Your girlfriends are like, wow, you slept with so many people. Wow. I think they call it a burn list or something like this. I can't remember the name of it. So you get rewarded for that in American US university type of shit.
So I want to just revisit back to your parents again here. You said your mother's passed away now. You caught up with her 3 months before she passed away. How long ago did she pass away?
I guess it was about 3 years ago now. 2 years ago. 3.
And what's your emotion towards your mother passing away? Were you upset? Were you happy? Do you miss her? Are you glad she's gone?
2 of 3.
2 of 3. And the relationship with your father, what is that like currently?
I don't have one.
Are you aware of where he is? Are you aware of what he's up to? Is he living close to you? Are you far away from him?
Occasionally I'll Google his name with the word obituary beside it so I can see when he dies.
Are you ever interested in trying to get him prosecuted for the crimes that he's done?
I think karma will do its job.
Karma might not necessarily mean be put in jail. It might mean a variety of things to you, to see what karma suits. And say karma has its day. How would you feel about that?
I look forward to the day when I can say 3 of 3. I look forward to that day. I will rejoice. Because...
Now this...
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Because of all of the photography that was taking place and all the gallivanting that I did as a child performing for these adults and the photographs and the videos and all this stuff, I now have... You were asking, do you have any preferences now? I think it's called voyeurism. I just learned about this recently, where you get off to like being watched. Yeah, I got that.
All right.
And I look forward to when I can say 3 of 3, so I can be a little bit more of a free person with my body. I can be sexually expressive in the way that I want to be and not feel shame for it. But not right now. Not right now while he can find it. Hell no. I look forward to the day that he dies. 2 of 3.
Question I want to throw at you here. Just going back off the last talk I had with one of my guests weeks back. Again, Jody Plichet. He seems to have somehow gone through his trauma. It looks like quite easily. I don't know how, because it's such a tough thing, right? But he seems to have just somehow found a way to go about his life and talk about it quite easy. And it's something that just happened. And I was trying to analyze that. I was trying to understand what factors were different to a situation like yours, right? Yours is extremely traumatizing. They're all traumatizing. Yours is particularly traumatizing. Now, two things I came up with that I think helped him is that with the discovery of his molestation when he was young, his mother was extremely supportive, didn't really bring it up. She brought it up. She made him really feel like no need to be ashamed. It wasn't your fault. He was able to blurt it out at the age of 10 or 11 to his mum. I think he was 11, and go on about his day. And she didn't cry in front of him. She stayed strong. And she said that the times that he left, like to go and play at his friend's house, she would cry and break down, and she would not let him see that to give him that support that he kind of needed, right? That was one factor. The second factor, which I'm not even sure that he realized, at least until I brought it up that time, is that his attacker, his monster, was shot dead by his father. So his father, when they captured his molester, they brought him through the airport, and his father was waiting there with the gun and shot him dead at the airport, right? So his monster was gone from that point forth. He didn't have to live a whole life with his monster being around. And one of the questions I did ask him was that if your father never killed this man and he was still around today, he did his prison sentence and came out and walking around, do you think that your life may have been affected? And I think, well, his answer was, I don't know that because I never had to deal with it because his monster wasn't there. But you have. Had your monsters been your parents and all these people, and it's a lot more complicated with yours, but had they had been taken out at a young age, this had happened a few years later, a car crash came and wiped both of your parents away. How do you think that would have affected your life? Would you still feel the same way you are now? Would you have been able to deal with things quicker or in a different way? The reason I'm asking this is to find out that the trauma that's happened is one thing, but is there extra trauma with your monster hanging around, and with your answer of you can't wait till the day that your dad's dead, how that's going to change your life? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like what if thing. I think that if they had died when I was young, I still would have had to go through the foster care system. I got a lot of people to get out if that were the case, right? So I just never let that be an option until now as I'm older and I know the people that did what they did, and I think that I will feel like I can be free. I don't have to hide any part of myself. And I have family that doesn't believe me. They don't believe me. They don't believe what I've said. They don't believe my story, my truth. Who wants this to be real?
Which family members is this?
And I don't want to keep having those conversations anymore. When he's dead, he's dead. He's done. We don't have to talk about him anymore. I don't have to
I just want to stop you
get the
there.
phone calls asking, where is he?
You've got family members not believing you. However, there's no family members there really supporting you along the way. So I'm curious about what weight these family members even have.
None.
I mean, like how dare they? How dare they is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, my father's family is a family of 7, so they more than likely. I mean, I don't want to speculate, but I think it's probably. I think it's easier for people to act like that's not the truth, because then they'd have to reassess how they view this person that they've known for many, 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 many years. And they'd have to reprocess all these interactions and change the way that they view that person. And he told them all I was crazy. And I was in the hospital to prove it.
But not what put you in the hospital in the first place because of it. That's the question they're not asking, A question I'm going to ask you as well. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't or anything like that. I've heard that forgiveness is a huge, powerful thing which I struggle to understand how people can forgive in these sort of situations. I had a talk last week with Drew Geldert, who's ex-gangster here in Perth. He'd gone through a life of hurt himself, trauma. He got put in prison for 7 years, and in that time he did a lot of reflection, a lot of understanding, self-work on himself, and he's come out. It really, if anyone's ever come out a changed person from any situation, this man has. So positive. And he was talking about forgiveness for some of the things that happened in his childhood, his mum's boyfriend, things like that. Yet I could not understand, and I did ask him that question about forgiveness and how you could possibly forgive some of these situations. And he said it's not about forgiving the situation, but forgiving the person who had done these traumatic things to you, because you're also seeing their inner child. You're also looking at the trauma that they've experienced, and you're forgiving almost like that child, but not the act of what happened. Understanding that much better, and I haven't delivered that exactly how he has described that properly to me or to us on the show. If you do have can grasp the way that I'm trying to put that on the table, do you think that it's possible, or there's a day that you would somehow be able to forgive the things that have happened to you? Not the things that have happened to you, the people that have done those things to you, understanding where they've come from as a child. And it's not excusing them. It's almost, and I'm still having trouble putting this in words, forgiving their inner child. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I don't have a bone in my body that wants to forgive them.
Sure. And that's kind of how I feel, right? That's how I feel, and I can't understand it. He had put it in words in such a way that it was quite profound, that this way of forgiveness is super empowering. And maybe I should connect you guys to Talk, because he's just a positive guy with filling up the positivity in people is unbelievable. He does these awesome coaching sessions. But if you like, I could connect you, and he'll explain that better to you. I'm certainly not saying forgive or condone anything that these people have done. I'm sickened by it. I'm only bringing this up for you. So
I don't have there's not any part of me that wants to forgive them.
What is your way forward from all this trauma that you've experienced? And what point would you reach one day when you know that you've gotten past what you need to get past?
Well, I really lost everything, down to living out of my car, lost everything, right? I'm now in a stable situation. That part is behind me. My way forward and the research that I've been doing for years and understanding trauma, understanding these memories, understanding the roles of different tools that you can use to heal yourself. I'm writing a thesis called TR20, and it's a trauma root theory to disseminate DSM-4 and 5. DSM-4 and 5 are the books that pharmaceuticals and doctors use to diagnose. I believe it's a static book that's not malleable to the organic human being. And there's a lot of gaps in Eastern and Western medicine and things that we don't understand about self-healing. Why would they ever want to teach us these things? Because it's a pharmaceutical-driven industry. Not that I'm making stabs at anybody. I'm just saying that it's not like someone with diabetes. When you have embedded trauma, a pill can help, but that might just be the Band-Aid. It's a two-part system. You've got to do the internal work and have those conversations and unravel it and pull the marbles out of the jar, examine them, set them aside, and pull more marbles out. And some of these marbles that are down below are going to make those other marbles look totally different. So talking about forgiveness and stuff, I forgive myself. And that's the only person I have business in forgiving. Not to backtrack, but
No. It's good.
But
I
I've
like
been
that.
writing my
Look, I
thesis
appreciate
and
it so much.
working. I'm trying to work. It's
Yep.
hard to hold a job. I don't trust
Okay.
anybody. Get paranoid and stuff.
Sure. We have a couple of screen messages and a couple of voicemails. So we've got Deanna. She was in that show. I was just trying to describe the forgiveness. She might be able to land that plane better than me. So here we go. She might be talking about that.
This is not about forgiving a person, and it is not about justification. Forgiveness is about letting go and freeing up the space that this takes inside of you and allowing that cord, that hook that this has inside of your soul to be released and let go. We don't have the power to absolve somebody of the things. That person never has to be confronted with an act of forgiveness. The forgiveness is solely for you, the victim, the person, to be able to release and say, so sorry you're a sick individual. Bye. Live your life somewhere else.
She worded that better than me. That's the track I'm trying to go down. She's got a follow up here.
Next is when you turn that forgiveness inward, forgiving yourself where you have been blaming yourself, forgiving yourself for the inability to be able to protect yourself because you were a child and thinking that it was your fault. Understanding, knowing, and having self-compassion and self-forgiveness.
Thank you, Deanna. Thank you for rewording that properly for me, because I struggle with that myself, because to be honest, if I'm in that situation, if something ever happened to a loved one, hearing what happened to you, I get angry. I get angry inside. I don't know how I could ever face someone without rage when this sort of thing happens, and so I have a hard concept understanding the forgiveness part with what Deanna just described and what Drew was describing to me last week. Okay, we've got two more screen messages. We've got Tonyan. Okay, you are the bravest person I know. Love you. And Elizabeth says, it's so difficult to love parents. When they do stuff like this? I was healed after my mum died in 2012. You are not evil. So that's from Elizabeth. Thank you. This has been a powerful show. We're going to start to tail it off here, Zoe. Are there any other important parts that you may think were left out, or that you want to bring up now, or any final thoughts that you want to raise?
Fuck forgiveness. Use it. All the anger, the hurt, the guilt, the shame. I don't need forgiveness for that. I use it. I use it as a motivator, and it's taken me pretty far. I was able to crank out a book, and I'm cranking out a thesis, and I'm going to have a TEDx talk, and hopeful to meet with the AMA and the APA. And I fuck forgiveness. You use it. You use it to build something better. Be the filter for that BS. If forgiveness is your filter, then so be it. To each their own. For me, I don't need to forgive them. That is fuel in my fire. It is the strength in my spine. It's why I stand so tall, even though I'm only 5'5". You use it. You use it for something else. And if forgiveness is the format that it needs to take for you to use it, then so be it. I respect that. But for me, no. Forgiveness is weak. I forgive myself. But I don't really need to, because I didn't make a mistake. I was just a kid. It was not my fault. I don't ask why anymore. Not everything happens for a reason. Some stuff is just really fucked up. And that's okay. You use it.
Zoe, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you there. I was wondering if you, as an adult now, knowing what you know, could go back in time to your young self, knowing what was going to happen in your life, but you could give the best advice to yourself to prepare as best you could, knowing what was going to happen, what would you say to yourself?
I would have told her to use her voice. Use her voice. I was groomed to be quiet. And I was silent for 3 decades. And when I started vocalizing it and writing it out, that's when I got to heal. So I wish that I had, if I could tell little me something, was just to use the voice. I can remember like those like basic aid training or something like this in elementary school, where the medics come in and they teach you about CPR and they talk about people giving you candy out of a van. That was my dad. That was my mom. That was the people at the mall that took the photos. People at the warehouse. My grandmother. It's my family. I wish I could have told her to use her voice. So I think that's why, as a parent, it's really important to not have this authoritative relationship with your kid. Because I think if I had somebody that was a safe space, that I could have vocalized it. But when you are the bad cop to your kid and you raise them in fear of you, your kid will never talk to you when the gym teacher does something, or when the boy does something to them in gym class, or whatever it is, right? If you guide your children so that they fear you, they'll never tell you anything. Trust. I didn't use my voice because there was nobody that I wasn't afraid of. All of the adults I was afraid of. But if you don't parent in that way, and you're a safe haven for your kid, when they're 16 and they sneak out and they steal your car and go drink beer by the pier or whatever it is, of course you chastise in the way that you need to, but it's how you. Kids are gonna have things happen to them. They're gonna make mistakes and all sorts of different things, and it's how you are towards them that will make them more comfortable in coming to you with things. And if they fear you, they'll never talk. So I wish there had been instead of telling me I was a little slut like my mom, I wish someone had noticed that I was lifting my skirt up in the grocery store because I was learning how to play that way. There wasn't anyone that I didn't fear. I couldn't come forward with those things. And it was so normalized in my home. I know that it's not the normal circumstance, what I've experienced. But if you're a parent and you're like, what if this happens to my kid? Will I ever know? Be the type of parent they can talk to about anything. About stealing your car and sneaking booze into the basement or whatever it is. Be the type of parent they can talk to that they don't fear. Because we can't stop people from doing bad things. People get raped, they get assaulted, they get hurt, they get mistreated, all sorts of awful things. You can't stop those things. But you can create a safe space for communication, for clear communication, open communication. So if I had to tell the little girl back then anything, is use your voice. Albeit I don't think anyone would have listened. Be the type of parent that listens, that doesn't get angry.
So being open like this to everyone's been amazing. If you could name 3 things that you want to, that you can put out on the table, what 3 things do you need now for help, to help you?
I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. I always keep something like this on me. It's for grounding. You can use a rock, a marble. I have another little box I was going to show y'all of just these little doodads. It's like a glass marble that I found that's broken, these little dollies, and these are things that I got as an adult, but I have things to ground myself and remember that I am in a present moment, that I'm not back where I was, because sometimes the flashbacks are just so wild. I'll wake up in one place, I don't even know how I got there. So I use a lot of things like this to remind myself of my 5 senses. I can smell it, I can feel it. I'm not going to taste this because I throw it on the ground, but it reminds you that you're in the present moment. There's other ways that you can do that. So honestly, it would be like little items like this to keep me grounded. The ability to write and allow myself freedom to write. That is really powerful. Writing the letters to people that I'll never send, but just saying it to say it, and you prove to something inside of you that you are validating that experience and you are doing it justice. And it's so, I think we're getting past the taboo part of society, but like if I could put therapy on a table, I would put therapy on a table. It was talk therapy that got me to this point, that gave me the tools to rationalize with the flashbacks, to understand what was going on, to understand that it wasn't my fault, to understand what boundaries are, to learn about grounding techniques, to just have a safe space where you can go into a room and tell them anything without judgment, without fear. Like, it's so powerful. You should give yourself that. If you have an experience like me, give yourself that opportunity. It is yours. So I'd put my little marble on the table. I put a pen and paper, and I'd put my therapist on the table. Or therapy programs.
Could I throw one thing out there and you let me know if it's important or powerful from people? So share these messages out to people, so they share the show with people to get your story out. The more people that will listen to how open you've been, the more it might allow others to come forward from what they've witnessed or been through themselves to talk about that, to help stop these situations happening more and more, raising awareness. That's from my outlook looking in, that I think something that I would put on the table is the raising of awareness much more as well.
Yeah, I mean,
I have
competing for a TV program right now, and it's a mental health platform. I'm bringing my thesis to the table. So yeah, share the heck out of this and let other people know, because that's where those people that do those things, that's where they get their powers, in our silence. I won't be silent anymore. I think I cut you off, Rock.
No, you're right. You're good. No, that's good. That's exactly what I was asking. Just share, like, do not silence these motherfuckers anymore. And if I have to say my opinion on this, and it may be unprofessional and it's probably emotionally charged, but I hope that your father and those sons of bitches die a motherfucking horrible death, you fucking sick pricks. I've got to say that because I'm so outraged by these people in society just moving around. I'm disgusted to know he's still out there. I am really disgusted to know that he hasn't paid these penalties. Sorry?
I'm not the only one.
This is the horrible part. That these people are out there moving around in society, and I'm so protective of my children. Specifically, you know, they're my flesh and blood as well, that anything ever happens like this, and to any children, I don't know how to deal with it in a calm manner. If I was ever to find out, Gary Plauché, what he did was, for me, he was heroic. This guy shot his son's pedophile attacker back in 1984, and I just thought that was heroic. Didn't give a shit about anything else but justice for his kid, even though his kid never saw it that way. But I think from an adult's perspective, it is. That's just my 2 cents. It might not be right, but it's my 2 cents. Yeah. Zoe, it's up to you. If you feel like bringing, if you want 1 or 2 people to pop up on stage and ask you anything or not, or if you want to interact with the audience, completely up to you.
I don't know if there's anything that anyone wants to ask.
Is there anything that anyone wants to ask? If so, you
My
can request.
DMs
We'll
are
bring up for
always
like a
open.
minute. Okay, so we've got Jeff. Jeff, we'll bring you up for like a minute, ask a question, and we'll pop you back down. Hi, Jeff.
Hey,
How are you?
Rocstedi. Hi, Zoe. I just want to first and foremost say I commend you and on how brave you are for coming out and talking about this stuff. Because I myself, 43 years old, and I experienced trauma and abuse. And I don't compete. It's not a competition. It's not. And let me tell you something. If I can say I understand, I understand. My father did some things to me when I was a young child that are unbelievable, and he is unfortunately still alive. I detached from him 3 years ago when my mother passed, and he did some awful, awful things. And I'm 43 now, and these things that he did to me started around the age of 10. And I'll just come right out and tell you what happened. He cheated on my mother, took me to his girlfriend's house, who had a daughter that was my age. The two of them made us do things, and I won't go into graphic detail, okay? And I was told if I told anybody that I would suffer the consequences. Well, I did. And I'm sitting here today, 10 years into what's called DBT training, and I'm certain by the words they're using, grounding, having a little safety kit. I'm going to show you this. Do you see this bag? Oh, I can't show you. I'm on camera.
Yeah, we're not turning
Yeah,
camera
real quick,
on.
because I want her to understand you're not alone, and I'm a huge advocate.
That's okay. I trust you on your bag.
Okay.
It's a getaway
Okay.
bag. Okay. It's got all my important documents, anything that I would need if I have to run and bolt because I still have security issues. I sleep with my feet out from underside the sheets because I would get attacked in my sleep and the sheets would tie my feet up and I wouldn't be able to defend myself. I still have vicious nightmares. I went as far, Zoe, as going through what's called ECT treatments, electric shock treatment. And I was so desperate to feel better. And I always felt it was my fault. But you know what? I know it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. And I was always made to be the villain. It was my fault. It was always told to me it was my fault. And it took 2 suicide attempts for people to really realize that I was reaching out for help. I wanted help. Nobody would help me. It was always get over it. It'll get better. It happens to a lot of people. You're not the only one. Well, you know what? You're right. I'm not the only one. It shouldn't happen to even one person. And I just wanted to say I commend you, and I'm proud of you for talking about it, because it took me 35 years to be comfortable enough to come out and do my podcast, which is mental health awareness related, and talk about things openly with confidence. And it's a huge problem, and it is a taboo topic, and it's a sickening thing that happens to people. And I'm sitting here with chills because of hearing just a little bit of your story. I didn't have to hear a whole lot of it. I didn't have to. I picked up on it right away, and I picked up on it that fast because I could feel your energy on what you went through. And I just want to say that you're not alone. I support you. I am now going to follow you. And I'm thankful that in the last 10 years, I've been involved with this DBT, distress tolerance behavioral training, to reinvent myself, to understand that it wasn't my fault, to ground, dear man, to understand how to protect myself. I have extreme PTSD, even though I had all these treatments and medications and spent 142 days in the psych ward, which were the best 142 days of my life, by the way. I felt safe in there. And for that man who I used to call a father, who was never there for me, who always would beat me up for no reason or abuse me for no reason, abuse my disabled brother, abuse my ill mother. And it went as far as when my disabled brother had his last seizure at the age of 43, I had to do CPR on him and he died. My father went as far as saying that I didn't do it properly. I mean, so he abused me all the way up until my late 30s. And when I had the opportunity to detach, I detached. And do I forgive him? No, I don't. I don't forgive him. And like Rocstedi just said, if I could and it was legal, believe me, he wouldn't be here right now. And I just got to hope and pray that karma handles it. And I am a firm believer that what goes around comes around, and he will get his in the end. And I'm a stronger person now. And
Yes, you are. Thank you for sharing, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
I just want you to know that my heart is with you. And
Thank you, Jeff. Well, sorry, this whole thing's very delayed. Hello?
Can you hear me, Rock?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I think I'm having some. Yeah, sorry, it's. I think it's a little glitchy on my side here.
I think if people want to reach out in a private message, that might be better use of our time today. Jeff, I really appreciate what you shared.
Yeah, I think so.
And I
thank you very much.
Appreciate it so much. My DMs are always open for folks.
Perfect. Okay. So we're just going to tail off now with the podcast. I want to know if it's okay if you give yourself a plug on where people can find your book. Obviously, we've got the link here in the fortune cookie. So people can find your book on Amazon.
Yes. If you search Zoe Yinks in Amazon, you can find my book. It is free with Amazon Prime. You can also buy a hardcover, or I only did hardcover versions of the book. An audiobook is coming out later in the year. Just working on that. And the best way to support me right now is following Zoe Yinks art on Instagram. ZOE_YINKS_ART. And in that bio link is my link where I'm competing to earn $100,000 from the Jed Foundation to use this as my mental health platform. I'm going to put it all towards my thesis and my trauma recovery work and some of the things that I've come up with. So if you believe in me and support me, all you have to do is register for an account. It's a free vote. You're more than welcome to donate a paid vote, but it's not required. Really, the free vote would mean a lot to me. I'm in.
Could you put that link in your bio
right now
at all on your Instagram?
It's in my bio on my Instagram.
Sorry?
The link is in my bio on my Instagram.
It is okay. Yeah, sorry, because this is a little glitchy. It's catching up this side with Fireside. It's just got a little glitchy. It might be my internet. Okay, perfect. So that's on your bio on Instagram. People can click that. You can vote for Zoe, show your support, at least in that way, at the very least. But I know you've got a lot of support from some people here. I'm sure people will be reaching out to you. And if you want to find out exactly where Zoe's Instagram link is, go to my Instagram, and on any of my social media, I've posted the link for this show. It's got Zoe's Instagram on there, so it's clickable to go to find Zoe. Any last words you want to leave with us?
Thank you for spending your time. Time is something we can never get back. And 10 months ago, when I found the scars, and 10 months later, I published my memoir, Breaking the Silence, I never thought that I would be a few months after that talking about it in a public space for other people to listen to. So thank you for being here. It really means a lot. And just just always use your voice. If you see something, say something. And that's all I'll say about that.
Zoe, thank you. Thank you for being so brave to talk about this. It's quite a story. It's quite a heavy story. Thank you to the listeners for being supportive, but yeah, just a special thanks to Zoe for standing up and doing this. And I think that the most important message I got out today is definitely that their power is in your silence. And so, yeah, don't be silent. Share this. In fact, everyone, please, when this show finishes, I'll make it public within a minute of it finishing, and find this show. If you could share it to three people that you know, get this message out. I don't usually ask people to share after a show. I tell people to share a show, sure, but this one in particular is such an important message to get out to the people. So if you can do that, post it somewhere, get the story out about Zoe Yinks. Stop this from happening to other kids. These kids are our future. We need to protect them. I've got a message here from Legends. Please tell her I said thank you from an abuse survivor. So that's from Legends from Stereo. Jared, he's in the listeners here. Thank you, man. You're amazing, Zoe. You're amazing. I don't know how it would fare out if, the shoe was on the other foot for me and, I'd gone through those things or something, but just to hear your story, I look at you so brave in telling the story, because it's a hard one for sure.
I am grateful for the experience.
I'm grateful to have you on. Thank you. All right, we're going to end the show here, but I'm going to give you a quick call on Instagram, if that's okay, Zoe, just to chat about the show. And you might have noticed I usually call them shows, and I said it just then, but I've been calling this one a talk because I didn't want to call it like a show. It's more of like a talk, a discussion about what happened. So I will discuss this with you offline anyway. Thank you to the listeners. Rocstedi podcast, episode 45 with Zoe Yinks. What a talk. I nearly said it again. What a talk. Thank you. Much love to you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.